Hey, this is Kevin. Another chapter, or um, another chapter of Why Me. I was going to talk about my car I got and things like that, but while I was building that van door, something quite humorous, I guess, happened to me. I got a call one day from the guy who was having the door built on his van. Hey, Kevin, you want to go to Florida for a week? You know it's bike week down there. I said, yeah. I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. Now, I never do anything on the spur of the moment. Most of the times because I can't. I don't have the finances. I'm never prepared for it. And in this case, it was no different than any other. Plus, even though I was living at home, and even though I was 19 at least, maybe, I guess I was 20 years old by then. That didn't matter. I still was under the thumb of my parents. And so after he kept bugging me, I said, look, man, I said, I don't even have but $50 in the bank. I said, so I can't go. He says, man, he says, me and I use the guy's name, me and Herbie are going down there. He says he just bought himself a Chevette and we're going to drive it down. And, you know, like this is going to be its maiden voyage. It sounded cool to me, and Bruce then said, look, I'll give you $100. You can pay it back whenever you need to, whenever you can. And so he kept bugging me to the point I said, all right, I'll go check it out, but I'm going to have to talk to my parents. I already know it. So I go up to the house. My shop was right across from there, from my parents' house. So I go up to the house, and my mother's up in the sewing room, which is in the back of her bedroom, and I go back there and I start talking to her about it, and she, for some reason, not only does she not want to talk about it, she doesn't want to make the decision. She says, well, I don't know why you're talking to me. I can remember saying it. I said, you're telling me I have to call Pop. She says, you know, and I had never called my father at work. Now, my father at this point actually owns the damn place. It's a sewing factory. He ran it for my grandparents and then inherited it. But I mean, I'm not saying, but he worked his ass off, so he deserved it. You know, this isn't no give me. But still, I never called him up at work, and of course, I was never on good terms with him anyway, so I knew this was going to be ugly. And so I actually do call him, and he actually answers the damn phone. I'm surprised. Now, they don't have secretaries and all that shit, so anyway, he's there, and I'm telling him what the deal is, and you can't go, you got a business to run, blah, 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 and all this stuff. You got work problems and all this, and finally, I just like interrupted him, and I said, in other words, I said, if I go, you're going to make my life a living hell. He goes, yeah, that's exactly right. I said, well, I'll see you in a week. So I hung up on him, got my $50 out of the bank. Bruce gave me $100. I had about 3 or 4 joints of killer weed left. So that was my contribution, and on the road we went. Now, I loved driving, so once I got behind the wheel, I wouldn't give it up. But once we got to Florida, Bruce had a aunt and uncle that lived in Flagler Beach, and that's just, I say just, it's a little bit above Daytona. So we had a place to stay for free, so that was one good thing. And also I had an aunt and uncle that lived down in Fort Lauderdale, which I didn't realize how far apart they are. I mean, I think of things a little, I didn't think of Florida being real long like it is. And but anyway, I kept bugging them about, us going down there for one night, because of course we'd stay for free to get there. Anyway, the first morning, because they live close to the beach, we got to go out on the beach. Well, that's about the last thing I want to do. We get out on the beach and there's nobody out there. It's like 75 degrees out. It's an overcast day. It's not pretty at all. Lay around there for a while, and finally those guys say, all right, I had enough of this, let's go do something. It was funny because, I mean, we ran into bikers all over the place. In fact, we picked up this girl that got drunk and lost where she was at. She went out to like get cigarettes, just walking, and couldn't find her way back to wherever she was going. We got her there. Next day, or maybe it was that day in the afternoon, we went down to Daytona, and there's bikes everywhere, just like you see at Sturgis and all that, and then nowadays you see them all over the place. And yeah, it was pretty cool. We took the car and we went out there and parked it on the beach like everybody else did. So we go up on the boardwalk, or whatever you want to call it, and hang around, look at bikes, and drink a few beers. Of course, all along I'm trying to watch my money, because I know I don't want to have to pay my brother-in-law, my brother-in-law to be back $100. So we get done up there, and we're walking back to the beach, and the two of them say, hey, look, some idiot's car's in the water. That was our car. A brand new Chevette. And got down to the car, and we asked people to help us push it out, right? But nobody would help. And as soon as he spun the wheels, it just sunk in, and that was it. There was no way. Now, had people help push us, we could have gotten it out. However, there was a police officer there, and he said, wouldn't have mattered, you're going to pay for the tow anyway, because I'd already called it in. And so here, not only is it a new car, but the guy that bought it is going to have to pay a towing charge. And of course, that's saltwater. Brand new car. I don't know if it really ever hurt the car that much or not. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure water was in on the floors and all. So, but anyway, that was the end of adventures for that day. The next day, the plan was to go to Orlando to Disney World. The only time I've been there. This is back there, and so that would have been 1979, I think. I think that would be it. When we get back to the house that night, my legs are starting to bother me. Right here on the front. And they're like itching. And then they start getting really hot. And I thought, no way. I'd gotten myself one hell of a sunburn. Overcast, 75 degrees. Now my chest didn't bother me at all. But there's a reason for that. I do a lot of welding. Even with a shirt on and things like that, you get sun ray, you get welding rays through the shirt and all, and oh, you'll get terrible burns from welding. In fact, I put a guy in the hospital because he was getting flashes from my welding. He knew better, and I didn't think where he was at it'd be a problem, but it ended up anyway. So here my legs are. The next day they're swollen. I mean, my ankles all the way up to my knees and above were swollen up. But we're still going to Disney World, and we get there, and I am like, I can't limp because both legs hurt just as much as the other one. I don't want to go on rides anyway because of the money, but we do, I did go into one dome where you sit on the floor, and it's a 3D thing where you actually end up, if you're not sitting on the floor, you'd fall over anyway because of you lose your equilibrium and all that. And I did have to go on Space Mountain. Now, of course, it couldn't have been any worse for me because there's those carts, the cars, have two people to them. And for some reason, I was the one in the back. The one in the front sits between your legs. So they're actually irritating, rubbing your legs. And of course, mine are all puffed up and red and everything else. I'm probably wearing jeans because I don't wear shorts. And then that ride is just next thing to violent, as far as the speed and the turns and all that stuff. I mean, it's cooler than shit, there's no doubt about it, but it's tearing me up. So anyway, we go through the ride. That's the end of me. I mean, I'm pretty well done after that. We leave there. We're on our way back, I guess, to Flagler, and we stop somewhere, and I eat spaghetti because that's the cheapest thing on the menu. And when we get back to his uncle and aunt's house, I start looking for ways to get down to Fort Lauderdale, wondering if maybe I can just rent a car and go down. Well, the guys, both of them, I guess, felt sorry for me or whatever, but they finally said, Kevin, tomorrow we'll just go down there. Now, we're only down there for a couple days. I mean, we're not even a whole week down there. So we hop in the car the next day, say goodbye to his aunt and uncle, because we're not coming back there. When my aunt and uncle know I'm coming, and we get down there, and of course it's fine that my two friends can sleep over and all that stuff, and they decide they want to go out and and tear up the night. And of course I went down there to visit, even though I'm not the type that visits, but I knew that my uncle would sit there and talk the whole night. He would never stop. And the stuff he had to talk about was interesting. He was a dentist, and he did artwork and welding sculptures and paintings, and he built his garages, and he built his own in-ground swimming pool. So very talented. He even built a bomb shelter. I mean, underground, the whole damn thing that's stocked with food and the whole thing. And so I just stayed with him, and those two guys went out. They actually went out and watched Highlight, and I think they watched dog races too, which is, just like Miami Vice beginning, where they show the dogs and they show the Highlight. So anyway, they came back and obviously had a good time, and I had an enjoyable time with my uncle, and for some reason I think my cousin was around. My aunt, she didn't hang around. She went her own thing, which that's typical of her. Not that she's mean or anything. She's a nice, good person, just not a very talkative. I'm not either. I can relate. So now we have to head home the next day. Well, I drove like 7 hours on the way down. I didn't realize, but this was going to add another 4 hours to our ride. So we get on the road, and I don't know when I got behind the wheel. Oh, before I did, though, how did that work? Anyway, we weren't stopping for anything except to put gas in the car and to buy more beer. That was it. So we had cups, and I think it was Bruce maybe was in the back at the time, and he filled one up, and he had it's a 2-door, and I guess his window didn't wind down, so he had to reach up through there and throw it out. Well, it just sprayed the hell out of him with piss all over the place. It was funny, and once I got behind the wheel, well, there was no stopping me. I'm going to the end. So I get us up home here, and I decided to help. So we get up to Uniontown, actually, and decided I'd just sleep there on the couch in the chicken house, they called it. It was right across the street from a chicken farm. So when we pulled in, here's Bruce's Chevelle. Actually, it came from Canada, so it's a different name, but backed up against a tree stump, and slight dent in the side of it as well. We go inside, and at the bottom of the steps to the second floor, there's a wine bottle busted with, of course, red wine all over the damn place. And Bruce is not happy about his car because it wasn't supposed to be touched. We already figured out who had been driving it, and we found out that while we were gone, this guy ended up being committed to a funny farm. So, you know, they were probably on what's called the 4th floor of the hospital. He was probably on the 4th floor of the hospital. We heard he wigged out on flakes, smoking PCP. So anyway, we went to bed. Next morning, we get up and hear the guys coming into the house. You know, of course, we slept late. He's coming into the house with a grocery bag, and he's telling us how he's going natural. I'm going natural. I'm not, you know, nothing, you know, nothing but real food and all that's going to enter my body and all this stuff. And he's showing us carrots and everything else. And Bruce starts, you know, asking about the car. Oh, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it. I'm sorry, you know, and all this stuff. And anyway, then the guy puts a coconut out on it. Yeah, he says, real coconut milk. He says, that'll be good for me too. And he comes back, he leaves then comes back with a jigsaw. And, you know, the blade's like that just pokes out of it, and he's going to try to cut into his coconut, and he convinces my brother-in-law to hold it. I'm thinking, you're nuts. And I'm telling him he's crazy for doing it, and I'm telling the other guy to stop it, and I'm telling Bruce to just, you know, tell him to go to hell, you know, but Bruce keeps trying to help him. Well, of course, they can't get it cut open. So anyway, the guy leaves again, and Bruce and me are probably drinking a beer and leaning up against the kitchen counter. And the guy walks back in. He's got his hands behind his back, and I don't think anything of it. I mean, you know. And about that time, he He says, you guys ever had crushed coconut? And he pulls out a sledgehammer. Bam! Hits that coconut on top of the counter. And coconut, of course, flies everywhere. There wasn't any milk in it. So, anyway, there's some snow on the ground as well. And so the guy says, well, you want me to help you pull your car out? Now, this guy's got a four-wheel drive. There was never any reason for him to be messing with, you know, my friend's car. And I said to Bruce, I said, no, Bruce, just tell him to get the fuck away. You know, but he says, well, all right. So anyway, his car's parked like this up against the stump. Here's a place to drive, and here's a bank. Well, you got to go up on the bank to get around the car to be able to pull it. And this guy tries once and starts sliding down, and he backs up. And I said, Bruce, do not let him do it. And Bruce won't tell him no. And he goes up on that bank, slides down and hits the front fender of the car, smashes that in. Of course, then he just drives on by anyway. And I told Bruce right then, I said, punch the son of a bitch. Stupid. Don't do drugs.